forgive me if I'm not, up to speed on some stuff. So coming over the last few days when I was thinking about preparing this talk, I thought, well, what am I going to talk about? And first I thought, well, maybe I should talk about economics and what economists do and why it could be exciting and all that. I understand this is the Society of Economists here at this school. But then I thought that would be not too exciting. I thought probably a better idea would be to show what you can do. And so, I've been doing this for a number of years, this being an economist. But over the last 10 years or so, I started working on developing countries. And over the last 4 or 5 years, we've been working on child development. Now, you might want to ask yourself, well, what is an economist doing with child development? Is that something that people doing education and nutrition should do? And you might have a point in some dimensions. However, I do think that economists have some advantage in looking at that. And I'll try to. So let me give this little brief introduction on what is an economist doing on these topics, and why we could contribute to something. And then I'll try to put this in practice with the experience that of some research projects that we've been working on over the last 4 or 5 years, and because I think that's the best way, to try it out and see by concrete examples what you can do. So I do think what we'll be talking about is implementing some interventions in poor countries in the attempt to help deprived children to try to foster their development. And I think we know as policymakers and scientists, they know a fair amount about how the brain develops, how children develop, and what is a good thing for a child. And yet there are about 200 million children in the world that do not achieve do not fulfill their potential. And then you can ask yourself, why is that the case? If we know what are the policies that would work, and I'll talk to you about that. So why is that is not done? And there's lots of stuff that we don't know. In particular, we don't know. You can think of the decisions that parents make in providing for the welfare of their children as investment choices. So you have a child that is a bundle of potentials, and where these potentials will go depending on the nutrition and the stimulation that this child will receive over the course of his life. And yet we don't fully understand how parents make these decisions, and that's where economists come into, because we are used to thinking about investments and people making choices. And so it's not just that you know that this particular drug or this particular policy or this particular intervention can be effective. You want it to be effective in the field. You want to be effective when given a certain amount of resources, which is typically very limited. You implement this policy, and you have to take into account that this policy don't happen in a vacuum. They happen in a world which is very complex and where people react to incentives in specific ways, sometimes in very complex ways, and sometimes in very perverse ways. And if you don't take into account these behavioral responses, then you don't have anything. So that's one of the reasons I think economists have been working quite hard over the last 10 or 15 years on these issues of child development, in particular in developing countries, but as you will see, not just in developing countries. By the way, if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt me at any time. So this is, I'll be talking about a research agenda or a number of research projects that I've been working on over the last few years. This is not work that I've done on my own. These are some of the people around the world that I've been working with, some in London at the IFS, some at the UCL, some at Yale, some in Colombia, and that's people I talk to. They've been quite influential in shaping what we've been doing. So, human development. There is now overwhelming evidence that what happens in the early years, and by that I mean from -9 months to 3 years of age, is absolutely crucial to what individuals eventually become. So what happens in the early years have long-lasting effects on social skills and emotional well-being, depression, participation in criminal activities, school readiness, academic success, cognitive development, even health, and definitely earnings and economic well-being. So this is just to give you, there is tons and tons of evidence. This is just give you some an example. This is a graph. Oh boy. This is a graph. What is this?
Just click on behind it. Just click behind it.
This is a graph that relates so these are some tests of early cognition at age 5 against the wages at age 24 to 27. So you can see that already what was happening, there is a clear positive relationship from the PPDTs, language development scores at relatively early ages, at 6 years of age, against earnings at 24, 27. And you can see that already kids that were well developed at 6, you can predict that they will be wealthier, earning more at age 27. And this is on birth weight, so going even earlier than that. So there's a clear relationship between birth weight and earnings. Cognition is not the only thing that matters. Economists talk about human capital. The human capital is often, when we economists put them into models, is just a variable. But effectively is a multidimensional object, and there is mounting evidence that that's the case. So cognition is definitely important, but then what now people call non-cognitive skills are very important for long-term achievements. I don't know if you ever heard about the marshmallow experiment. It was done maybe 30, 40 years ago in California, Stanford. If you check it up in YouTube, you'll find some hilarious videos on it. Basically, the experiment was they took these kids that were 2 or 3 years of age, and they put them in this room and they gave them marshmallow. And they say, look, if you can wait for 10 minutes, I'll give you another one. If you eat it, that's gonna be it. And then the experimenter left the room. And so there are these videos of these kids, agonizing over eating this one. But what is amazing is the fact that how these kids behaved in terms of showing patience was an incredibly good predictor of how well they did at school and how well they did on the job market 25 years later, 30 years later. So there, these non-cognitive skills, the fact of having patience, but there are others about social attitudes and stuff. that develop at very early ages, they seem to have a long-lasting impact on individual behavior. And what is important is this type of skills, non-cognitive skills, there is evidence that they are very malleable in the sense that you can affect them. And by affecting them, then you can affect their ability, children's ability to learn in school, and so on and so forth. The reason why that's the case is partly explained by some recent neurological research that indicates that brain development occurs during the first years of life, and different functions of the brain develop at different ages. So here there is a graph. This is taken from a from a fairly well-known paper published in the American Psychologist a few years back. And so you can see that the part of the brain that controls seeing and hearing, which are fairly elementary functions, develops first, then the receptive language, then high cognitive functions develop later. So different skills that are controlled and influenced by different parts of the brain develop at different points in time. But what is crucial is that if you don't develop seeing and hearing, it's going to be all receptive language. It's going to be very difficult to develop cognitive achievement later. So there are these dynamic interactions between different parts of development, different components of development that seem to be very important. Now, all these issues are relevant everywhere, but in particular in developing countries. And according to the Lancet, which is one of the most famous medical journals in the world, published in 2007 a series of papers on early childhood development. And one estimate in the Lancet said that there are 200 million children that are at risk of not developing their full potential. And that's where they live. In Africa, Latin America, and Asia. So in developing countries. So what are the risk factors that are relevant in developing countries? There are biofactors in nutrition. Under nutrition is, especially during pregnancy, but also in early childhood, can be very detrimental to the development of the brain, as is iron deficiency, iodine deficiency, and in general the lack of different micronutrients. Infection diseases are more prevalent and they can interact with that. Environmental factors, but also psychosocial factors, because when your parents are very poor and they're worried about putting a meal together, probably they're not in the mood for playing and for stimulation and the like, and as we'll see, those things are very, very important in child development. So this is how big are these problems. This is a graph that was produced by a friend of mine, this guy Norbert Shadi, who works now at the Inter-American Development Bank. And when I knew that these problems were serious, but when he showed this to me, I was amazed. So let me explain you this graph. So on this axis, there is the age of the child in months. This is a sample of poor children. They're all poor, these kids, in Ecuador. And that's a standardized TDIP score, which again is an index of language development, which is a good indicator of cognitive development for those ages. So they start observing these children at age 30. So this is standardized in a way, it's standardized by age, and it's standardized so that a normal child should have a score of 100. Okay? So this is a relative measure, it's not an absolute measure. So that's why normal child should be around 100. Now, they divided these children, this sample of children, according to the wealth of their parents, some index of wealth. And this is this is the poorest decile, the top kids that they had in the sample, as I said, they're all very poor, are in the fourth decile. And they're not doing badly. They're around 100, and so they're okay. Now notice that the poorest children, even the one in the first deciles, the poorest 10%, when they start being observed at 36 months, is they have a score of 90, which is bad but not too bad. What is amazing is how they lose. So by age 5, which is when 6, which is when they get to school, they have a delay of 40 points. The standard deviation of this score in a normal population is about 15. So this lag is 3 standard deviations of the distribution of score. You know that if you have a normal distribution, when you take twice the standard deviation from the mean, there's almost nobody in the normal population. These kids are off the charts. These kids are seriously in trouble. If you convert this in terms of age, this is a delay of almost 3 years. So you send to school kids at this age 6, but has a developmental age of 3, which means that he goes to school and doesn't understand anything. So that kid is finished. At that point, it's going to be really hard to do anything for that child. That child is going to be in trouble all his life. So this is a dramatic picture, and you can see it all over the places. You take the poor children and have this type of delays, completely off the charts. And what is sad is that there is something that can be done for these children. And I'll show you some of this stuff that can be done. I've done some work with recently with Sally Grantham-McGregor, who's an emeritus professor at UCL, and Jema Madami, who works in Bangladesh on a sample of Bangladeshi children. And we find that the unique feature of this data set is that these children are followed from birth up to the age of 5, which is very unusual. So we have measurements of their cognitive development at 7 months. That I could talk about this for another hour because it's an interesting question how you measure the cognitive development of a child of 7 months. And there are these tests that are problem solving for 7 months year old. Here is a problem solving for a child. So he has to do like that to get the toy inside the box. And we see that there are socioeconomic differences in the cognitive development that emerges as early as 7 months of age. By 60 months, the difference is quite substantive. Even again, it's a sample of all poor children. If you put the rich children in a sample, then it becomes huge. And the large fraction of this gap, which is interesting, seems to be associated with stimulation or lack thereof. That particular case. I've done some work with a student of mine at UCL, a PhD student, on a sample of Chilean children. And again, we find these big differences that increase with age, and they're much related to the presence of stimulation in the home, presence of books, presence of toys, and attention that the children receive, and so on and so forth. So, as I mentioned, there is evidence that there are interventions that can improve the development of these children. Early years are not only important in the long run, they're also malleable. That's when you can do things, you can achieve things with policies. And this implies that it's possible to design interventions that affect outcomes in early years. And is evidence that this intervention. Oh, this is so I have 2-3 examples of this type of interventions. The first one was done in Guatemala. It's known as the Atoll experiment in the literature. The results were published in the Lancet, but also in the Economic Journal. Interestingly, most of the people involved in these experiments were economists. So they provided nutritional supplement reinforced with iron and other micronutrients in a randomly selected set of villages for 2 years when the children were very young. And then these children were followed for 30 years. And they found effect after 30 years in wages, in annual earnings. Interestingly, they found effect on the children who received the supplements when they were very young. They didn't find much of an effect on the children that received the supplement when they were already older than 3. That goes to show that at least for this particular intervention, which is a purely nutritional one, you have to act really early. Already 3 years for this is late. And then, if you think of the graph that I showed you before, what does nutrition do at these ages? Nutrition is important, especially for iron deficiency. This was supplemented with iron, this thing here. And iron is important up to the age of 2.5 in the formation of circuits in the brain. So if you miss that period, then it's very difficult that you can recover from that. And that shows that. This is a very famous study. This is incredibly famous. It's the so-called Perry preschool program in Michigan, in the U.S. Not exactly a developing country, but so these were kids aged between 3 and 4, and were assigned to a high-quality preschool program in the early 60s. And then these children were followed into adulthood. This is on the late range, but the difference is it's not a nutrition stuff intervention, but it's a preschool, high-quality preschool, so stimulation of the life. So these are the effects of this. These were children in the 60s. So then we they were observed at age 40. So and these were all living in deprived neighborhoods of this Ypsilanti town in Michigan. So 36% of the children who received the intervention had been arrested more than 5 times by age 40. 55% of the non-intervened children. Proportion that earned more than $20,000 per year at age 40, 60 versus 40. Graduating from regular high school, 65 versus 45. Basic achievement of 14, 49 versus 15. These are all big differences. Now you might ask yourself, okay, how costly is this program? Because definitely it's got impacts. It was not a cheap program. It was $50,000 per child. However, let's look at the benefits. So, there are $7,000 of earnings, education savings, special education needs savings. Taxes on earnings, $14,000. The welfare savings, $2,000. Already this is kind of covering the cost, more than covering the cost. But then if you look at the reduction in crime activities, these were valued at $171,000. So if you're an economist, this is a no-brainer investment. You should definitely invest into this.
I'm just wondering, the stats you've shown us, doesn't it show us, like, policies like free education for all, is not enough to sort of deal with a problem? Because you're saying that sending a child to school, sending all children to school, doesn't mean they actually have equal opportunity. Things like transfer payments to poor families would be probably more useful than a policy like free education for all.
Maybe. There is a lot of discussions about transfers and the effect of cash transfers. One of the points I want to make is that well, it seems to be the case that policies have to be very well designed. So this was a very high quality nursery program, and that's probably why it was so effective in the long run. And now, I'm showing you effective interventions. I could also show you plenty of interventions that were costly and had no effects whatsoever. So the point I want to make here is that it's not easy to design good interventions, especially when you have limited resources. And B, ex ante, you don't know what is going to work. I'm going to show you some of the stuff that we've been doing in Colombia, and we are having some big surprises. There were some parts of the intervention that we thought that would definitely work, and they're not showing any impact, and instead other parts that are working. So ex ante is very difficult to know what's going to happen. Exactly because, when you go to the field, when you go to reality is very complicated. People, households react to the stuff that you give them in very different ways. They have different preconceptions, they have different beliefs, they have different expectations, they have different incentives, they have different knowledge, information. And therefore it becomes very difficult to predict how they react to your interventions. Another interesting point that I want to make is that now there's a discussion that is now happening in the US, and a little bit we are having it here. Now, if you heard about this social impact bonds. So social impact bonds is a new idea, which would work like this. Let's take something like this. So if these numbers are for real, if I'm a private investor, I want to make money. And I can say, okay, I can issue some bonds, and I can give them to the people who do this policy. They use the money I give them in exchange for these bonds to pay for it. And then once the profits from this are realized, I can reap some of it. So what they're doing in the US, and now we're discussing with people in Oxfordshire to do it in this country, is to do an intervention like this in the private neighborhoods, and then make an agreement with either with the new academies or with local education authorities to say, look, if we are successful in our intervention in early years, by the time this gets to school, we can reduce massively the special education needs budget. And so you'll pay us these savings, or part of these savings. And so the idea is that if there is this money on the table, if there are these profit opportunities, these returns, then let's use them. And the idea is to convince private investors to go into this. But that's another project. Let me continue on my thing. That's my favorite study, partly because it was done by this person I mentioned before, Sally McGregor, who is a remarkable woman who has started much of this work 25 years ago. What she did, she was living at the time in Kingston, Jamaica. So she identified in the 80s 129 malnourished children aged between 9 and 24 months. And she also looked at a group of non-stunted children. And then she developed this well-structured curriculum, which is based about these home visits. So there is a social worker that once a week goes to the house of this child and plays with the mother and the child. Now, when I say plays, it sounds very soft and very kind of. The stress is on well structured. So this curriculum, every page of the book is a set of activity that corresponds to a certain week, and they're thought in a way that they become more and more complex. There are materials, so there are puzzles, books, and stories, and songs and all this kind of stuff. They teach the mothers to build toys with garbage, with stuff that you find around the house. So it's kind of nice. So that's what she did. And so they for 24 months, for 2 years, these community nurses would go and do 1 hour per week and visit these children. So the children were divided randomly into 4 groups. There was the stimulation group, there is the nutrition group, you just give them some food. Remember, they were malnourished, they were all stunted. And the group that received both, stimulation and nutrition, and finally control group that received nothing. And then the remarkable thing that she observed the children at the end of the interventions after 2 years of the treatment, at age 7, 8 is years, 11, 12, 17, 18, and 22, 23. So 20 years after the end of the intervention. So the results were quite stunning. So this is the first study which looked at the children just during and at the end of the intervention. So this is the beginning. There's the control group. They're sliding down. Remember the Ecuador picture? The same thing. They're losing. This is the supplemented children. Look at the difference. Supplemented with the nutrition. These are the stimulated children. Look at this difference. These are the children that get both interventions. And these are the non-stunted children. That's a remarkable achievement. Now this is at the end of the intervention. What is even more remarkable is what happened afterwards. So these are at age 7, 8, this is age 11, 12, and this is age 17, 18. So these are the, so it's not in this picture, so these are the non-stunted. Basically the effect of the nutrition just disappears. By age 7, there's no, so what they do here is just divide the stimulated versus non-stimulated. So these are the non-stimulated. Some of them get the nutrition, some get nothing. These are the stimulated. Now, they don't get all the way up, but still is a significant difference. And this is many years after the intervention. So you have an intervention that lasts for 2 years, but it has very long lasting effects. And then last year, they did the 22 years follow-up. So these are on earnings. And you can see these are the stimulated, the green, and the non-stimulated, the red. You can see there is a shift in the distribution of earnings. This is 20 years after the intervention. So it's a remarkable finding. And so these are the tables for the various economic effects after 20 years. So as I mentioned, we learned much over the last few decades on this. We learned that development during the first 3 years sets the stages for long-term development. Human capital is a multidimensional construct, and its different dimensions are all important. Nutrition is important, stimulation is important. It might be more effective than nutrition. And the physical and social home environment is central to the development of cognitive and non-cognitive skills. And finally, there are probably important dynamic interactions. So what happens to you at early ages might affect your ability to learn later. But there is still much we do not know. We still do not fully understand how nutrition affects the development of cognitive and non-cognitive skills. There is a little bit of evidence on iron, which is a bit stronger, that I was mentioning. The evidence on other micronutrients, iodine is very strong, but on other micronutrients like zinc, which some people think that is very important, other people are not sure. I don't have the time now to talk about iron and malaria, but that's another thing that I was amazed. When we started doing this work, I thought the doctors knew what they were doing, but they're worse than economists. They really don't know much. we still don't fully understand the role played by different inputs, and especially we do not understand the interactions. So the example of iron and zinc is iron is good for children that have iron deficiency. If you couple iron with zinc, zinc is good in other situations. If you couple them, it's not completely clear. The evidence. What is more important for economists, we still do not understand what determines investment in human capital. What do parents do? What constraints do they face? And how are resources allocated within the family? So if you have two children, you're very poor. Imagine you're very poor, you have two children. One is bright and one is dumb. Where do you put your resources? Do you want to compensate? So you see, okay, the smart child is going to be okay. He's smart. I need to help the one that is less smart. Or you want to say, look, I don't want to waste my money on this kid, and I as well put it on the smart kid. Maybe he will like his brother later. We don't know how people, and these are dramatic and real choices for parents, because when you have a very tight budget, especially in developing countries, you see these choices. You see that they choose one child to send to school. How did they choose that? So we don't completely understand that, and I think that's important. And what is even more important, we do not understand what informations they have, what they know about. We know little on child development. They probably know even less than we do. They mean the parents. Your parents don't do anything, right? Don't know anything. So for all these reasons, it's very hard to know how to build cost-effective interventions. What the doctors say, we need to go from efficacy to effectiveness. So we know maybe some drugs work in the lab, but we don't know how they work in the real world. And so in terms of the research agenda, we need to identify the mechanisms behind the formation of cognitive and non-cognitive skills at young ages and the decisions parents make about investing in their children. And that's crucial for the identification of cost-effective interventions. Let me skip this then. And let me tell you about, how much time do I have?
What's the time?
10.
About 10 more, 5 more.
Okay. Let me tell you about the stuff we've been doing in Colombia. So I've been working in Colombia for about 10 years now and doing welfare programs there. And over the last 3 years we have developed a new intervention. So with Sally, we adapted our Jamaican curriculum to the Colombian situation. But the big challenge we are doing is can we do this in a really cheap way? And so what we want to do is to try to deliver the home visits using community resources available in the human resources available in the communities. And so that we can have a program that can be scaled up at the national level. So in Colombia they have a welfare program which is very large, and this is a conditional cash transfer, so they give money to these poor families. Now an interesting aspect of this particular program is that the beneficiaries of these programs, they elect a representative. There are lots of interesting stuff about this program. The money is given to the women in the household, not the man. And then these women elect a representative who's also a woman. So about every 50 beneficiaries, they elect one representative. Now, they're called mother leader. And these mother leaders, they connect with the program and organize their activities. They work for free, they don't get paid. What we noticed over the years, because we've been working with this program for some time now, is that they are different. They are distinguishable for their leadership skills, from their community networking abilities. I've been going there, as I say, for 10 years, and now, if I go to a meeting of the beneficiaries, I can tell you immediately who the mother leaders are without asking. Because they're more entrepreneurial, they're more articulate, they're more educated, they're typically better dressed. All these features, and you can identify them. But then if they have these leadership skills, maybe we can use them. So the idea we had is we train them, we hire them, and we let them do the visits. Now this has got two advantages. One is that they are much cheaper than specialized nurses. So we pay them, so we ask them to do about 5-6 visits per week, so 5-6 hours per week, and we pay them $100 a month, which corresponds to about 25% of their monthly income, of the household monthly income. So they're really happy about that. But for us, it's very cheap. At the same time, we empower them. And so the community gets ownership of the intervention because they're doing it on their own. They do their own visits. They also like it not just because they get the money, but because this work they do is basically go and play with the children of their neighbors. And so that's what we've been doing. Now, we have to train them, we have to hire and train some psychologists that eventually became supervisors and support staff. That's the most expensive part, because we have to have this network of supervisors and trainers that work with us on the thing. So this is examples of the curriculum. So this a sheet from the curriculum. So this is month 32, first week. So you have to do a song, you have to play with a doll, with you can build this. This is a bottle. It's a plastic bottle. So they, we teach them how to build all this stuff. You give them instructions. There is this little story. All things that they're supposed to do during that particular hour. These are the puzzles. So the crucial thing is that one thing that we discovered: lots of these parents, they want to do stuff for their kids, but they have no idea how to do it in an appropriate way. For instance, puzzles are well known to be extremely useful for brain development, for stuff. But if you give a child the wrong puzzle, it can be a really bad thing because you can only frustrate that child, and then it doesn't want to see that stuff anymore. So we have, this is the simple puzzle. So the round part comes out. It's just one piece. So the task is to take the round part and put it in. Now this one is a little bit more complicated because it's still one piece, but it's a rectangle. So that's already an order of magnitude more difficult than this one. And here, you get all the shapes, so it becomes harder. But so the child progresses through harder and harder tasks. These are stories. So the story cards. So we discuss the mothers, the coffee growers, and eventually the coffee. There's the caterpillar that becomes a butterfly, that kind of stuff. That's a little book that we produced. These are the toys that we do with plastic bottles and all kind of stuff that you can find around the house. This is the nutrition. The nutrition, this is the latest fad in these circles. So these are, this population is typically doesn't lack calories. They do have calories, but they are, micronutrients is a problem. So you give these little sachets, they are this big, and they dissolve into food. They have no smell, no color, or no taste. And they contain iron, zinc, vitamin A, vitamin C. So this is the training session, one of the training sessions of the mother leaders. That's a visit. So this is the mother with the child. These are siblings. That's the mother leader playing with the child with the storybook. So that's the same in another situation, the same visitor with another child. That's yet another one. That's an older brother participating into the visit. And so we did this in 96 towns, allocated across 4 different groups: home visits for nutrition and control, 1,400 children. So that's what we've done. We just finished this. And so when I wrote these slides, I used these slides for another lecture. We didn't have results yet. We just got the results in the last couple of weeks. So this is the first time I see this in public. I'm going to Bogota next week to present this stuff. So we're all very excited. I was telling you there were surprises. So I was going to the field and stuff. I was 41% of our children are anemic when we started that, which is pretty bad for children at this age. And so it seems that this sachets is all they need. Now, to our surprise, the nutrition stuff does not have any impact whatsoever. Not on cognitive development, not on anemia, not on nothing. Probably they're not giving it to them. We don't know yet, but they're not finding anything. The good news instead is that we are finding effects of the stimulation. And